I have been to Palestine 2007 and 8 and 9 until I was denied entry in 2013 and barred for 10 years. The apartheid state of Israel, and I'm sure Douglas Murray will be glad to hear, is, banning voices that actually speak out and extend solidarity to the Palestinian people. So yes, I have been, but as you well know, I don't think you need to have been to understand what the issue is about. We've been talking about global Palestine for years, for decades even, you know, and I think we might have finally reached the point where Palestine has become global. I live in Brussels every day and I count the people with kufiyas, with Palestinian badges and stuff. And it's like I can't get out of my house without I'm go, oh, another one, oh, a kufiye, oh, a free Palestine badge, oh, a sticker on the lamppost. I'm very pessimistic for the short-term future, but I'm very optimistic in the long term. I think we're seeing the end of Zionism. But it's not easy. There are moments, obviously, of total despair. I think that the least we can do is not stopping.
My guest today is not Palestinian, but he is someone at the heart of the Solidarity movement, a writer, editor, filmmaker, and organizer, and longtime advocate for justice in Palestine. Frank Barat has spent years holding space for difficult and necessary conversations. He has worked with iconic voices like Angela Davis, Noam Chomsky, and Ilan Pappé, curating powerful collections like Gaza in Crisis and Freedom is a Constant Struggle. He was a coordinator of the Russell Tribunal on Palestine, and his work with the Ciné-Palestine Film Festival in Paris is an extension of his activism through storytelling and visual culture. I'm Jehan, and in this episode of Falastin, we're not only going to talk about Palestine as a cause, but also as a cultural and political lens, a way of seeing and understanding global struggles for liberation, how storytelling and film can shift the global conversation, and what solidarity means and looks like in this moment of genocide. Frank, let's dive right into that. But before we begin, for all the Douglas Murrays out there, have you been to Palestine?
Firstly, thanks, Jehan, for having me on the podcast. I'm honored, and I have been to Palestine 2007 and 8 and 9 until I was denied entry in 2013 and barred for 10 years. Unfortunately for Douglas, I haven't been since actually 2010 because I didn't go for 3 years, between 2010 and 2013. But the apartheid state of Israel, and I'm sure Douglas Murray will be glad to hear, is banning voices that actually speak out and extend solidarity to the Palestinian people. So yes, I have been, but as you well know, I don't think you need to have been to understand what the issue is about. But yeah.
What does Palestine mean to you? I mean, we've seen over the past nearly 2 years now, this massive solidarity mobilization like I've not seen before for Palestine. As bleak as things usually look, we always see this kind of glimmer of hope. So we see demonstrations every weekend for nearly 2 years. So as one person who is part of this kind of global mobilization for Palestine, what does Palestine mean to you?
I mean, we've been talking about global Palestine for years, for decades even, and I think we might have finally reached the point where Palestine has become global. Palestine has become the center of, the struggle for social justice, for equality, for freedom, and for justice. I totally agree. I've been involved in the Palestine question for about 20 years now, and I'd never experienced something like we've experienced in the last 20 months. Non-stop demonstrations pretty much every week, sometimes all over the world, massive demonstrations, incredibly intersectional as well, what we hadn't seen before as well, a lot of, movement that didn't really touch Palestine before are now deeply involved in this question. So, as you were saying, as much as I mean, when you look at Gaza right now and at Palestine in general, what's happening on the ground is so horrifying. I mean, honestly, we have no words. You know, you can say genocide, you can say it's just like a massacre and sadism like I don't think we've seen before. It's just crazy, and we are kind of lost for words. But on the other hand, the solidarity, day in and day out, we've seen over the last 20 months, um, has to be something that we can hold on to, and has to be something that we can find sort of optimism and beauty in it.
Um, how do you think Palestine fits into the architecture of, let's say, global struggle? How has it, from your perspective, reshaped maybe how you understand concepts like liberation, statehood, or even human rights?
I mean, for me, and I've been saying this for 20 years, Palestine is the center. Once, the slogan, no one is free until Palestine actually is not a slogan. It actually means something. We know Palestine as a, laboratory as well for, occupation, repression, militarization of the police, vulture capitalism, kind of slavery, and we're seeing Palestine exported all over the world. The level of repression that we've seen over the last 20 months, and I think it might unfortunately be only the beginning, is also the proof that the people in power cannot, they've understood as we have that Palestine is the key, and if we find the key to Palestine liberation and Palestine freedom, we might unlock everything else. And I think they're very aware of that, and that's why they're criminalizing pretty much everyone who speaks out in support of Palestine. But on the other hand, I always try to find the positive in things, and on the other hand, the level of repression shows the level of activism as well. So the harder they go, it means that in a way we're doing the right thing. So and one day it will switch. And but I think Palestine is the key to deconstruct everything else, because Palestine liberation doesn't mean statehood. Doesn't mean two states. Palestine liberation is a lot deeper than that. And I think you know, every day, I live in Brussels, every day, and I count the people with kufiyas, with Palestinian badges and stuff. And it's like, I can't get out of my house without, I'm go, oh, another one, oh, a kufiye, oh, a Free Palestine badge, oh, a sticker on the lamppost. Yesterday I drove past one of the biggest university in Brussels, the ULB, Université Libre de Bruxelles. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? There's kufiyes everywhere. And, as kind of a long-time activist, we had never seen this before. And these students, these artists, these young, the youth, is also the future, right? So if they are already at like 20 years old, 25 years old, aware of what's happening in Palestine and aware that it is key to everything else, you know, even if the present and the short-term future might look very dark, I think that in the long term, we are potentially, I say potentially because again, the present is so dark, on a path to something very different.
I want to pick up on that. The present is very dark for Palestinians themselves inside. And it's hard to sometimes see this mobilization that we are witnessing on the outside because of the fact that they don't see any change in their day to day. So, is there a risk of sort of flattening Palestine into a metaphor? Like, how do we keep the struggle rooted in the specificity
Yeah, it's
of my
a
first
tough one.
language?
Yeah.
Specificity of lived Palestinian experiences?
Yeah, it's a key question. I mean, to be honest, it's very disheartening. We I mean, I think that the least we can do is not stopping. And we can try everything. We have to take everything. You know, op-eds, petitions, demonstrations, direct actions, lobby, cultural initiatives. The idea for me is not stopping until this is over. But also, obviously, I mean, for me as well, for everyone, it's so disheartening and depressing to see that we've been going on and on and on for 2 years, and obviously more than that, and that on the ground, the situation is desperate. There's no other words. We talk about Palestinian sumud, resilience, resistance, and
It's very romanticized, by the way,
oh,
in my opinion.
I agree 100%. Because the bottom line is Palestinians shouldn't need to have sumud.
Mm.
They need equality and freedom. They don't need to be okay with a war every 2 years in Gaza and an ongoing Nakba for 70, whatever, 76 years. This is not okay. Sumud shouldn't be part of the Palestinians. They should have just equality and freedom. But recently, I was talking to a few people, actually medical personnel who have been to Gaza, like Tanya Haj Hassan, like Victoria Rosie, and they both told me something very, very, very depressing. They were saying like the first time we went to Gaza when the genocide started, you could still feel, the Palestinian sumud, resilience. They were like, this is hard, but we're gonna prevail. We're gonna stay here. Gaza is our land. And the second time, it was the same kind of. But recently, they both told me people in Gaza are just tired. A lot of people in Gaza are saying we just want to die. Khalas, we've had enough. And also, there was and again, I'm repeating what they've told me. The few times they went to Gaza, the people of Gaza were telling them, film everything, show the people of the world what's happening in Palestine. Once they're going to realize what's happening, they're going to stop it. There's no other ways. It's no one can sustain and can watch this without stopping it. But the third and fourth time they went, people understood. I'd understood that people knew, but people didn't care. And when I say people, obviously it's not the people; it's people in power. They just didn't care. And this realization for any human being is just crushing. You do not matter. You do not exist. You're not human. And this is something we've got to deal with. I recently watched Sepide Farsi film about Fatem Assonna called Put Your Soul on Your Hand and Walk. And she's followed Fatma for a year. They had like sort of conversations for a year. And yeah, towards the end of their conversation, Fatima was saying like, I want to leave Gaza. I've
Mm.
had enough. So yeah, that's something that it's very hard to grasp with and to accept. But again, what can we do except just trying and trying and trying and trying again?
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I'm being too optimistic, but I do feel like there is at least this kind of veil is being shifted on the hypocrisy of it all. So do you think like Western liberals have reached the end of this illusion that they can, champion universal values and human rights while at the same time, support apartheid and occupation and the genocide in Gaza?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. The last 20 months have been so they have been an eye opener for many, many people around the world. Again, I was talking about the kufiyes in every streets, every universities, every like cultural events, and there's been a massive shift. Even if like 5, 10 years ago you had like public opinion polls were showing that, oh, despite the propaganda and the mainstream media narrative, people start to understand that what's happening in Palestine It's not like two people fighting for land, etc. Right now, this is over. Long, people completely get that what's happening in Palestine is about occupation, colonialism, apartheid. So I think this is a very important step for the movement. We are many. We are many, many more than we were like 2 years ago. And also, it's been, as you're saying, the veils have, the curtains have opened, the veils have fallen, right? That this so-called Western democracy based on human rights, based on freedom and etc. is actually a lot of BS. We're seeing governments all over the world supporting people's freedom there, but not supporting it there. So we're seeing also, and that's very important for us all to understand that, again, deconstructing and liberating Palestine has a lot to do with liberating ourselves from these so-called democracies we are living in.
Yeah, but is it enough to kind of raise awareness? I mean, we've been in this, like I have to say, when I look back at my time in the United States, I went for 1 year to study high school level, 11th grade, and it's funny because that was the start of sort of the siege. It was 2006, 2007. And we were locked out, the students from Gaza, because the border closed at the time and we couldn't go back. And I remember there was a TV report that people wanted to interview us to talk to us about what's happening. And I remember when I watched the report after the interviews and everything was framed from Hamas, 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 Hamas. And now when I look back and I'm like, we're still in we're fighting the same narrative. Everything is about one thing and it's stripped of everything else that is actually at the root cause of it all. Sorry about that. So is it enough that we are raising awareness, or does solidarity now require more? Is this, do you think that what's happening now is effective at all?
I mean, it requires more, 100% for sure. I mean, I think raising awareness and educating people, education, there's this slogan, educate, mobilize, agitate, and educate is the first step, because once people know, they know, and then they have a choice to either continue with their normal life and their blinds on, or to actually get active. And in the work I've been doing for 20 years now, including talking to high profile figures, celebrities, etc., education has been a key part of it. Telling people, look, let us tell you what's really happening. Switch off your TV and the BBC, etc., and let us. I mean, when I say us, let Palestinians educate you about what's happening. And I've seen people shifting radically on their positions in Palestine through education. It's like once you've seen it, you can't unsee it, or once you know, you can't unknow it. And then at least you have a choice. You have the tools and you have the knowledge of what's happening, and you have the choice to be active or to remain silent. So I think, again, raising awareness, education is a key part. But then the next step is becoming politically active. It's like the thing is like being anti-racist is not enough. You have to be proactively anti-racist. You know what I mean? Like just me saying I oppose racism, but then having my neighbor, my uncle say racist stuff and me not saying anything is not enough. I need to challenge racism on a daily basis. And I think for Palestine, it's the same. So once you know, what are you going to do with it? I mean, in the last few weeks only, we've seen, people saying enough of, representative democracy. It doesn't work. And actually, that's what brought us here. So let's do direct democracy. You had the flotillas, you had the march to Gaza, you have the caravans from Algeria and Tunisia and Morocco. You had Palestine Action in Brussels. Nearly 1,000 activists blocked two, Israeli armed companies. So, yeah, we need to do more. And I think civil disobedience is crucial because, the basic thing about civil disobedience is potentially committing a criminal offense, but to avoid a much bigger criminal offense to take place, right? So we need to do more, and because also it's about Palestine, but it's about all of us. And again, this we won't be free until Palestine is without yeah, like I'm stuck on romanticizing it. Yeah, it's very important because we are seeing the exportation or the importation of the occupation all over the world. The militarization of the police in our streets, people, being like visited by anti-terrorist unit for taking part in direct actions. This is, fascism is happening all over, and how we fight it is going to be crucial.
You're one of the organizers behind Ciné-Palestine, to Paris-based film festival, which I've actually had the pleasure of attending before and reporting from. What role do you see cinema playing in the Palestinian struggle, especially in Europe? And as you pointed out, there is a rise of criminalization, there's a rise of censorship. Can cultural platforms like festivals and cinema and films and books even reach people that protests and petitions can't?
Yeah, I mean, Nina Simone said decades ago, artists should reflect the times, and that's very important. Artists, and Angela Davis talks about this as well quite often, that artists should allow us to have a vision, to have something else, to give us tools to imagine a different future. So I think also, as you well know, and by the way, so I was one of the founder. We were a few founders of the festival Ciné-Palestine, which takes place in Paris every year. Right now, I'm not really involved in it anymore, and there's an amazing team led by a lot of Palestinian women, by the way, and it's still doing amazingly well. And I attended last year's festival, and it was amazing. It was the 10-year anniversary of the festival. And it's also really down to the dedication of a lot of people, because it's not easy to do this. And I know there's like festivals, all over the world now. Yes, films are very important as well, because as you well know, the story of Palestine, and if you want to link it to the story of Zionism, is a story of narrative, right? And the
Permission to narrate. I keep thinking back to Edward Said.
Of course, yeah, of course, 100%. And the Zionist movement has really put a lot of energy into creative their narrative. A people without a land for a land without a people. I always get this wrong. That's the correct word. A people without a land
for a land without a people.
Yeah, yeah. And this myth, Ilan Pappé wrote a book called The 10 Myths of Israel, right? I mean, films like Exodus in the sort of late 60s with Paul Newman on a boat coming to the land, the promised land. And I've played a key part in framing the fact that, Israel, like historical Palestine is the land of the Jewish people. And it's worked. It's worked, in the heads of a lot of people, it's worked. And also, they've been really good at dehumanizing the Palestinian people. And I mean, what we've experienced in the last 20 months couldn't have happened without a lot of people thinking that Palestinians are lesser human beings. So I think cinema is also a way to recapture this narrative and to tell our stories, or the Palestinian to tell their stories, but without also trying to sort of romanticize it too much, because a Palestinian filmmaker should be allowed to be a filmmaker. But obviously, for a Palestinian, it's very hard to make a film about anything else than Palestine. But it's key, and I think um, cultural figures also nowadays have a lot of power. Some of them are very influential. Some of the most well-known people around the world are cultural figures. So it's how we use the fact that they have a platform, they have a mic, and how do we help them sort of speak out.
Is there a Palestinian film or filmmaker that you think more people should know about, or a work that has stayed with you?
There's, I mean, again, so many, because the thing about being involved in the Paris Palestine Film Festival is that you meet so many people, so many, screenwriters, filmmakers, producers. You hear so many stories. So honestly, I wouldn't want to name one or two because there's like so many, and that's also why these sort of film festivals are very important because people have to remember that Palestine doesn't have a film fund. They don't have like Channel 4 films. They don't have the CNC like in France. So for Palestinians to make their films, it's already a struggle. So these festivals are a way to network, to meet people, to find funding for your films. And there's so many incredible stories out there. I mean, I was one of the producers of Maddie Fleifel last film called To a Land Unknown. Damn, I didn't forgot To a Land Unknown, which is the true story of two of Maddie's best friends, um, and and it's crucial that also Palestinian films become mainstream. Go to Cannes, go to Venice. There's a few films coming out. Anne-Marie Jasser, Palestine 36, which is a film about a key period in Palestine history, a kind of a forgotten period, the Palestinian revolt of 1936, 1939 against British imperialism and against, Zionism involvement with British imperialism. It's a key film because I mean people have to understand that this period 36 39 is nearly as key as the Nakba to understand Palestine and how the Nakba has happened and how the Nakba could have happened and how the Zionist militias became the Israeli army and turned Palestine in 48 into so-called Israel. Yeah. So yeah, films are crucial, I think. They're not going to save or free Palestine, but again, I think we have to use, if we have a toolbox, we have to use every tools in our possession, and culture and films are very important. Yeah.
I mean, you've seen this movement evolve over a long time now. You've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people. We've seen hopeful moments, but too many devastating moments, including this one. So, what keeps you grounded in the work, and do you feel hopeful?
I mean, what keeps me grounded is Palestinians themselves. 100% for sure. You know, again, it's hard not to romanticize it, but ask anyone who's been to Palestine, and they will tell you the same thing. I mean, a friend of mine called Iman Marifi, she's a French nurse, and she was in Gaza in 2024, I think February, March, and she worked at, I forgot the hospital, but anyway, she was in Gaza. And when she came back, she said that Palestinians taught me humanity. They teach, and I think that's crucial because when you go, you see people, you hear their stories, but also you encounter their joy, their humor. Um, the Palestinian people are really proud people. They wanna, ahlan wa sahlan. They wanna welcome you in the best. My fear every time I went to Palestine was like, oh my God, how am I gonna do it when Ahmed or Maisa come to Europe. 'Cause they've received me with so much love and so much affection and so much beauty. Am I going to be able to give them give that back to them when they come to Europe? There's a lot we have to learn from Palestinians. So they keep us grounded, Palestinian authors as well, and Palestinian scholars and Palestinians from Gaza, and but also I think you know Noura Erika recently said genocide is suicide, and I think that's a key thing to understand that we we have not won for sure. The solidarity movement, the Palestinians. If you look at what's happening in Gaza and in Palestine, people say you've lost, right? But have they won? The 1%, have they won? Can you really win? Can a genocidal state, president, prime minister really win? If you look at the sort of, maybe I'm sort of romanticizing now in the broader, philosophical, they've lost as a human, as a heart, as a soul, they've lost because, again, genocide, apartheid, colonialism is suicide. So and the beauty of the movement, people that, again, I always say, like, once you join the struggle, it changes everything. I mean, your friends become brothers and sisters. And you realize that you're actually a lot more than you thought we were, and we have no choice. What's the other choice? What's the other option? So yeah, keep fighting. The late John Berger, an incredible British author and revolutionary and activist, said the struggle will be endless. But by this, he meant, the struggle to become, even like the internal struggle to become a better human being and stuff. And there's a lot of beauty in this to say that, you always learn, you always try to become a better person. And the movement helps you with this. So that's what personally keeps me going. But it's not easy. There are moments, obviously, of total despair. Yeah.
As a Palestinian from Gaza, it is difficult for me, I think, to untangle all the different emotions and the perceptions of what's happening. But from where you stand, what do you think the future holds?
Look, so I was, I think last year already in there's a big sort of, let's call it festival in France called La Fête de l'Humanité. It's really massive. Honestly, it's hundreds of thousands of people over 3 or 4 days. There's concerts, there's debates, there's movies screened and stuff. And I shared a panel with Ilan Pappé, who's become a very close friend now. And we had lunch afterwards. And Ilan said, like, I'm very pessimistic for the short-term future, but I'm very optimistic in the long term. I think we're seeing the end of Zionism. And then I went back to the train station and I jumped on a cab with a Palestinian from Gaza who had left Gaza, 6 months after the start of the genocide. And we talked. And I didn't mention that Ilan had said this to me, right? And he said exactly the same. Frank, the short-term future is very dark, but I'm very optimistic in the long term. And I also think that, you know, as a human being, if the only thing you have in your heart is hatred, just imagine, you wake up every morning with hatred in your heart. You hate your neighbor, you hate the TV, you hate the birds, you hate the kids, you hate the dogs and the cats. At one point, you crumble. It's not sustained. Hatred is not sustainable. And I think if you put it, you know, at the scale of a state, it's the same. Honestly, look at Israel right now. This state, this apartheid state, and again, I'm not talking about the people, I'm talking about the state. The apartheid state of Israel is hated all over the world. You know, Israelis who have been brainwashed for a very, very young age are still, seeing in the polls and stuff, convinced that they are on, in the right, They are on the right and in the right. But the thing is, what's happening in Israel? Look, for example, the settlers, the extremist religious settlers, that right now the focus is on exterminating any Palestinians. Finally accomplishing their dreams of the full Nakba. The land will be Jewish, only Jewish people on the land. Palestinians will be expelled or killed, or turned into slaves. Sometimes I look at Israel and I think like this, what's this TV show like with Pedro Pascal? The Last of Us? Was it The Last of Us? Or, when like people turn into like zombies and they start eating each other and stuff. That's Israel right now. People like, you already know, like Israel, you've got like citizenship is like sort of Ashkenazi Jew, and then you've got the, Mizraim, and then you've got the Falasha and there's already levels, of hatred in Israel, even between their own communities. So that's the only thing. I think that, and also, sorry, but we have to remember that during the last years of South Africa apartheid, the nationalistic Africans of South Africa started war with Angola, started, war with all the neighboring states, starting brutally killing, black South Africans. And we're seeing this with Israel as well right now. This kind of monster, lunatic monster, kind of headless, running around like, bombing Syria and Lebanon and Iran and obviously Palestine. So again, I think it's just not sustainable. And I think the Palestinians are teaching us that, the struggle is the only way forward. And the movement all over the world, I think, I remember after Operation Cast Lead, a lot of, which was 2008, 2009, 3 weeks, about 1,400 Palestinians murdered. A lot of us in the movement were saying like, this is it. This is a moment like no other. Israel is not gonna, come through it unscathed.
Time since it has been worse.
Yeah, but this time really feels different. Really feels different, and I think, I hope I'm right, but yeah.
Well, Frank, we could be here talking for hours, but thank you so much for joining me. And thank you.
Thanks for having me, Jehan.
You're welcome. Thank you everyone for listening, and please also follow Frank, find him on YouTube and listen to the conversations that he has as well. It's quite enlightening. Thank you.
Bye, Jehan.
لأني ولدت فلسطينيا لأن جذوري في عمق الدهور لأني ولدت عربيا وأني في القدس من فجر العصور أموت كل يوم أموت كل يوم القدس لنا دوما القدس لن تموت